Hello，各位家長，你哋好啊！好多謝你哋今晚咧都出席我哋呢一個 webinar。今晚嘅 webinar 咧都比較特別嘅，因為我哋都真係請到Miss Abigail Carr 去同我哋一齊去分享一下。Hello Abby，Hi，係啦，同我哋一齊去分享一下咧，即係以佢做咗咁多年即係名牌幼稚園嘅經驗啦，去睇翻其實香港嗰個優質嘅教育其實定位喺邊啦，同埋點樣去揀合適自己小朋友嘅一個優質教育嘅。係啦，咁樣就喺開始之前啦，我都簡單咁樣去介紹下自己先啦。係啦 ，I'm actually really excited tonight, and I really hope you are too. Just because I'm just saying you guys are here because you do care about your little one's education, and I'm sure tonight will be a very fruitful night because we have Miss Abigail Carr. Hey. I'm just going to clap anyways.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you guys are clapping at home as well. Well, you guys must stay till the very end because we have some little gift for you. Because Abby has written an amazing kindergarten guide for parents. So with that guide, you instantly know what questions you should ask when you visit a kindergarten and you know what criteria you should look for. And you won't get it if you don't stay till the end. So if you guys are joining us on live, then you're welcome to, leave us some comments and we'll reach you out at the end. So you guys probably know a little bit about me and Arby already. Before we dive into your questions, please allow us to briefly introduce ourselves. I'm Truda, hi, a parent coach, and underneath this identity, I'm a registered pharmacist with a master in mental health. Yeah. That's a little bit strange, but yeah, I do. And I used to serve at baby section. So I got asked a lot, literally a lot. I'm basically like a walking Q&A bank. Because just the other day, I was doing this consultation call with one of my clients. And I was like, she was saying, oh, I just bought this little toothpaste for my baby. And then she showed me. I was like, that's not edible. And that has no anti-decay function. And then she was like, really? I was like, you really should have asked me because there is only one toothpaste that I know that can be 100% edible, safe, and anti-decay at the same time. The rest might be edible, but they don't really prevent any tooth decay, or they might contain fluoride. Shocking, eh? Well, I'm sure my clients can personally tell you how I can escort their parenting journey 360 degrees. I'm also a public speaking coach, so I know what it takes to master a second language. And I have a very signature program named 我家就是國際學校 to help parents to create a great English environment without using expensive tools. And I care about child's mental development a lot on top of the physical development, especially in Asian countries, because I feel that a lot of Asian parents, they tend to instill a lot of things in their babies. They want them to excel everything, and they were doing everything in advance, and they would talk about the perfect timing to make love, and the perfect educational tool, the perfect playgroup, and perfect school, and probably perfect marriage, perfect job, things like that. The list does go on. You get the idea? And they just want everything to be so perfect. They don't mind investing. They're obviously doing too much that takes the actual substances away. And that's not healthy, and that's not right. So here I encourage parents to pick the right stuff for their kids, respect their own pace, rather than just the perfect bits and bobs. I really want you guys to enjoy this journey because there is only once with your kid. Try to savor it, okay? So that's about me. Abby, now is your turn. Would you like to tell them who you are?
Sure, thank you. Yes, my name's Abigail, but you can call me Abby. Sometimes people find that a bit easier, and the children have always called me Miss Abby. So Miss Abby, Abby or Abigail. I am currently a parent coach and early years specialist working with parents, teachers, and school leaders. So in the past, I have actually had 23 years of working in education with young children from birth to 8 years old. I've been in Hong Kong for 16 years. And no, I'm sorry that I can't speak Cantonese. I'm always saying that. I'm sorry, it's been 16 years and I'm still doing this interview, this questions with you in English. So thank you, anyone here listening in English. So I've been here 16 years and I have been working in both the international and the local settings of kindergartens as a teacher, as a school leader. And I've worked very closely with many families, I think thousands of families in the last 16 years, going through their processes of play groups to pre-nursery, to preschool, into primary school, and kind of supporting their admissions process all the way through. But after this last couple of years, I've now working directly with families. So working directly with individual families to support them, particularly, and I'm with you, Truda, on mental development. I will focus a lot on personal, social, and emotional development because we know that is the foundation to everything else. So when I work with families, yes, exactly. And I support them to understand their child's, their context of their child, what the social emotional development is that they can see, that they can observe, what things should they be looking for, and then use that to understand what kind of kindergarten may support their child and which one is best for their child. Now, I have to say, I do not go as far as choosing a kindergarten with parents, but I do advise and I help parents to ask and formulate questions for kindergartens, particularly related to their child. So because I've been on both sides, I've been working with parents outside of the schools, I've worked with parents inside of the schools, and I know that it can be a challenging time. So yes, so it's lovely to be here this evening, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Abby. We're so glad to have you here. So yes, that's about us. For those who just joined us, please allow me to introduce ourselves in brief. I'm Truda. I focus on helping parents with kids before 24 months as a parent coach. And I have a signature early education program, aka 我家就是國際學校, to help parents to inspire the kids English before birth and to take care of their parenting needs 360 degrees as a medical professional. Whereas Abby, the seasoned educator, is now also a parent coach to help you guys make better decisions on the road of education for little ones aged between 2 to 6 years old. So tonight, we actually have 50 questions from the parents, and we have gone through all of them. Tonight is not about answering individual questions, because we want to, put them into the structure that you have a more systematic way to understand what the approach to a better education for ourselves, or for our little ones. And so Asby, once again, thank you so much for having, given us 1 hour to demystify the questions for us. The first one is, this one is good. What do you think the biggest challenge is for parents when looking for a kindergarten?
Yes, good question. The biggest challenge, I'm sure many parents listening in are thinking, I know what the biggest challenge, I have so many challenges. What is the biggest one? I think the biggest one that comes up is the pressure, particularly the pressure that parents put on themselves potentially. But that's exacerbated often by the situation in Hong Kong with the education system and, the interview practices and that goes on in kindergartens, and having that pressure from sometimes before, like you were mentioning, sometimes even before a child is born, or even before a child is even in their mother's tummy. Sometimes it's in your head immediately when you're trying to make a baby, and then you're like, which school am I going to go to? I have had parents in a kindergarten when I was teaching in K1 come and ask me, which university can my child go to? And I could tell from there that there is a pressure to think about the future for their children as soon as they're in their mind. So I think the biggest challenge is the pressure they put on themselves.
Yeah, you're right. The pressure that kind of, like I said, that kind of takes the actual substances away, because they're kind of doing everything with a special purpose instead of, enjoying the moment, living in the moment. So yeah, like I said, there's only ones with your kid. Please savor it. So yeah, so what would be your advice to families looking for kindergarten right now?
Yeah, and I have this, so many parents actually, even when they come in, when I've been working in schools, would ask me, what should I be doing when I'm looking for kindergartens, even when they're coming to visit mine. And I would often say to them, where do you live? Because where you live and the kindergartens in your area are the ones you really want to focus on. So the biggest piece of advice I can give is to really get to know the kindergartens in your area. If there's nothing worse and nothing harder for your child if they have to travel across Hong Kong, sometimes 2 hours on a school bus, even 2-year-olds, traveling across on a bus. And if you think about the area that you live in, there are probably many very good kindergartens in that area. Because that Hong Kong kindergarten curriculum guide, and this is a really important thing for parents to know, and you can access this on the Education Bureau's website. The guide to the kindergarten curriculum in Hong Kong is set for every kindergarten. So the key performance indicators that every kindergarten should adhere to and stick to for quality assurance is set for every single kindergarten, international, local. We all have to make sure that we're following. Even if we are using an international curriculum, we still have to follow those key performance indicators. And there is a huge focus on high quality. So all kindergartens should be providing high quality kindergarten education. And we are very lucky to live in a region where kindergarten education is just so important to everyone that there's a lot of focus on making it good, on making sure that kindergartens are doing the right thing. Lots of reviews, lots of, there were not that recent, actually it's 2000, but over the years they have been building on these reforms of education. So that's why I would always say to parents, where do you live? Because if you live far away from the kindergarten that I'm working in, for example, when you come to my school, I may be concerned that your child will have a difficult time when they travel. They won't have enough sleep. Maybe they're rushing to have breakfast on the way, and then they're hungry when they get in, and then they're rushing to get home, and they don't have that downtime and resting time. So really, the biggest advice is to check out the kindergartens near you, as many as you can, so that you know them, well. Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, I certainly don't want my kids to be traveling all the time. Yeah. That's not human.
Very common.
It's very common to.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I understand a lot of parents. They kind of look for the best schools in Hong Kong, so they would do everything to send their kids to that kind of schools. But the problem is, you're not encouraging a healthy brain development if you can't figure out the sleeping problems, the sleeping quality and all that. And obviously nutrition also plays a big role. But I mean, education is not everything. Yeah. So how do parents know if the kindergarten is right for them educationally then?
Yeah, this is a really big question. I know that thinking about what's right for your child. And the best thing that you can do as a parent is to understand your child first. So knowing your child's interests, obviously parents know these kind of things quite quickly, but understanding child development. So actually understanding what stage is your child at. And we have to remember every child develops in a different pace and at a different rate. Every child is different. Your child is unique. So getting to know that. And this is where, when I work with families, I will help them to do that, to kind of look at the child development milestones that their children are reaching, or particularly areas maybe that we would be thinking about when they go into kindergartens, and then formulating questions for the kindergartens based on your child. Because often the questions that come to me as a school leader or a teacher in a kindergarten are, how many teachers, how many, what's the ratio to children and teachers, what's the curriculum. But often, and I find this as time goes by, that parents, if I tell them about the curriculum, actually they don't really have a grasp of it because they don't teach it. They haven't been trained in teaching the curriculum. So actually going back to child development first is the main thing a parent can do. And I know that can be, that's not, you don't have to do a degree in child psychology or anything, but having that support from someone who knows about child development, brain development, actually understanding, as you work with Truda, so understanding where the children are at and then finding out how to ask the questions at the schools. And that's when you can then gauge, okay, is this the school right for my child? Is that the kind of thing I want for my child at this time? Of course, you'll be looking to the future because you do look at the primary school that the children might be able to go to. That is something that comes up. But we shouldn't forget about the here and now. And I think COVID-19 has reminded so many people that the here and now is actually more important than the future, because the here and now is going to affect the future. So what your child is doing at this moment in time is more important than thinking about what primary school and secondary school and university that school could get you into. So thinking about, what's best for my child at his or her stage of development at the moment. And we know that although kindergartens in Hong Kong do need to, follow the kindergarten curriculum, key performance indicators and the guides, but it's a school-based curriculum. So kindergartens can run quite different ways of doing things in the schools. So finding those right questions to understand really what they do. Because if you just say, what's your curriculum? And they say, oh, it's the English curriculum, or we base it on the IB curriculum, or we use the local curriculum. Often parents don't really know what does that mean in broader terms. Yeah, it's quite a broad discussion, right, from the teachers if they answer like that. But knowing like specific questions about development of the children, I think.
Okay, well, I do have a pretty tricky question for you.
Oh, okay.
How willing are they to answer those questions from parents?
How willing are schools?
Yeah.
Well, that is a telling sign. Because if they aren't willing, then you might say, oh, is this the right place for me and my child then? Because really, and I think in Hong Kong, I've met like hundreds of educators in Hong Kong in both the local and international settings, and all of them have a love for children and development, child development in some respect. What happens is there's a lot of pressure from the primary school system that filters down into kindergartens. So I'm training teachers at the moment, and I'm training them hopefully as the next generation of Hong Kong kindergarten teachers to really understand and think about play-based learning and what is supportive to children's development, active learning, taking part in, science experiments and running around the playground, and having social time. These are more, and physical time, these are more important to under 6-year-olds than sitting down, even if you're playing a game with the teacher, sitting down at a desk and, doing things like sedentary, sitting down. So I think there is hopefully some changes going on in the kindergarten world. And this interface that the EDB calls it, the Education Bureau calls it, the interface between kindergartens and primary schools, which is that connection that we make, is part of the key performance indicators. So the more the kindergarten teachers know and understand and believe in play-based learning and child development and what's appropriate, just like it says in the kindergarten curriculum guide, I have to say. So following that more closely and being strong about it, I do believe there can be changes that happen through the system, but it takes time. And I think we've discussed this before, Truda, about parents. So if parents have a better understanding and a greater understanding of what is supportive to children's learning in the early years, they can, I want to say the word demand, but demand that from the kindergartens. Because you want to send your child to a kindergarten, then this is what you know as a parent about your child's development. You want them to do these things. They should be playing, they should be running around, They should be doing active phonics games for learning to read. They shouldn't just be sitting down writing ABC on a piece of paper. Unfortunately, that is what happens sometimes in kindergartens in Hong Kong. So I think being able to ask those questions and hearing passion coming from the educators in those kindergartens will make a difference to you as a parent, to kind of think, okay, they care about this. That means something to me.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. I just want to do a very quick pulse check. So, Abby just mentioned a word, play-based education or curriculum. Does anyone know what that means? Well, okay, just a very quick poll. Does anyone want to hear? She further explains what play-based actually means. Okay, I got the thumbs up. Okay, just one thumb. Any more? Say yes.
Hands up, good.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm getting some response. That's good. Okay, what about the rest? Are you guys all dead?
They're all asleep.
Okay, I'm getting some more. Okay, probably very busy with the kids, settling down. Okay, great. So, Abby, can you please inspire us what that actually means?
Well, okay, play-based. I could do a whole hour or more, much more, on play-based kindergarten. So I'll do it in 2 minutes. Yeah. So play-based, play-based now is a very key word, right? in early childhood, and it's often misused because, as I mentioned just now, sometimes people think play-based is when a teacher sits down and plays a game with children or makes something play-based with their children, which that's part of it. But actually play-based is much broader. It's about allowing children choice and agency. We use this term, agency is independence in their choices, and being led by the child. So a teacher will listen, observe, respond to the children, rather than say, oh, I'm going to teach all of these things using this activity today. It's more like, oh, that child, those children were so interested in these things. I'm going to ask them some questions. I'm going to tell a story or read stories around that, and use this interest of the child to build on something active with them and listen to them and go with them. I'm not going to set up an activity that's supposedly play-based. That's very simple thing, but play can be free play. And I know that I have a lot of experience of working with families who are worried about free play because they say, well, they're just going to play. That's not learning. But free play is essential to child development. Great. It's essential to children's self-esteem. They problem solve by themselves. They get independence. They kind of get to know themselves through free play. You need to have guided play, which is what I was just mentioning, when a child shows some interest in something and then you guide the play and they guide the play and you guide the play, and you kind of interact. And then you've got play with language, like stories and storytelling, and play with active play, risky play, all essential for physical development, which is the cornerstone of everything else. And that's social play as well. Lots of different types of play, Truda. So it can be quite a long discussion if we talk about play. And I would love to do that with you at some point. That would be fun.
Yes, please. Yeah. I mean, I want to be, want to be in it. Yeah, I want to be in one of the students because it sounds fun. So fun. Okay, thanks so much. And actually, you just mentioned the word free play and guided play. And it's very funny because apparently these words are mentioned in the official guide.
Yes.
Yeah, because you guys, if you have time, I seriously encourage you guys to go on Gaoyoko, that website. And you can check out the guides for the kindergartens. They have a very, very detailed guide for the kindergartens to how to run curriculum properly, to encourage their whole person development through play. Instead of, just sitting down, holding a pencil, or write this and that. So it's a very, very interesting topic. I mean, if you guys want, I can totally do another video on YouTube maybe, and I will show you how to read those boring documents. Probably they look very boring to you guys.
I can say, well, as a teacher, I find it not that boring. And I think actually, I can understand when you look at it, it's quite a big document. But it's
a lot of pages.
Lots of pages.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the key questions parents can ask when they visit kindergarten? Because a lot of open days are coming up, and parents are handing in the application forms probably year round.
Yeah. Now I know, like I mentioned, the usual questions are like, what's the curriculum? And that these are important as well. So do ask them, so you can hear from them how they describe their curriculum.
How they describe
it, yeah. And also how many teachers, the children, that's very common. But I think one of the things, and I have heard this sometimes from parents, but not always. And I think it's an important one because, as we always say, personal, social, emotional, mental development is the most important thing in early childhood, so that you can build that foundation. So I think one of the most important questions to ask is, how does the school support self-discipline? Now you notice I use the term self-discipline and not discipline, because if you think about the word discipline, it has a negative connotation often. But when I work with families particularly, I will always support themselves with positive discipline, because positive discipline is positive self-discipline, is about using our understanding as an adult and our communication skills as an adult to show children how to be self-disciplined. So do the right thing when they need to, but also to be able to acknowledge their own emotions when they have trouble, because we know young children are still learning how to do that. They're still learning how to navigate social interactions or deal with things that don't go their way. So they may have responses that we say, oh my goodness, they're not very disciplined. They don't listen, or they always cry, or they have temper tantrums. And that's so normal, right? It's normal for children to do that. And if they don't do that, I may think there was more problems because they are asserting themselves and understanding themselves. So what you want to do first is develop your own positive self-discipline methodology with your children, and then ask the school what they do. Because I have worked unfortunately, with a family that had a very difficult time, who their son was showing some aggressive behaviors, and they've kind of nipped it in the bud. Like they've managed to stop it escalating, but they realized that it was because they were doing different things at home and school. So at home, they were trying to do time in. If you know, this term is to work with your child through difficult emotions and big emotions. So you sit with them, you talk with them, instead of saying stop crying and don't do this, or sending them to, if they've done something wrong, you send them away. But the kindergarten, unfortunately, was actually giving time out, sending them to go and sit by themselves. So there was a complete disconnect. And I've worked with that family to now build the confidence. I think they were a bit scared to actually approach the kindergarten about their discipline, self-discipline methods. And now they're working together. So that is a really big one, because it can really exacerbate issues with social and emotional development. If people because they do spend quite a lot of time. Sometimes it's only 3 hours if it's a half day, but that's a big chunk of their morning time with those teachers and with that school. So you want to be doing the same thing. So that's a big one. So I think that's a really important one. And the second very important one is, how much active play time do children have through the day?
Yeah, physical activities.
Yeah. And you want to hear that is a lot. You want to hear that most of the time they're not sitting in a chair. And of course, some parents often think, oh, but if they're sitting in a chair, that means they must be learning. Totally the opposite. they might be taking in bits and pieces, but the best learning happens when children are moving, when their body is moving, when they're getting their heart rate up, when they are interacting with other people, touching and feeling and sensing things. They need to use all their senses to learn in that age. So how much active play, really important one.
Yeah, you're right. Because I just did an other video about reading the reports for kindergartens, and actually someone mentioned they did not give enough physical active time to the kids. Yeah.
Unfortunate.
So yeah, it's totally something we have to bear in mind, because we just have to respect the kids. They are like that. They're born this way. This is how they learn, and this is how they, grow as a person. So I just got this little interesting question from Tracy. Yeah. She asked, is Montessori considered as the play-based learning? So I'm pretty sure other parents, they instantly have this kind of jargons popping up in the mind. Would you like to have a crash course on this? Please.
It's a really good question. And again, Montessori is another thing we could have another whole webinar about. But I'm working actually at the moment closely with a Montessori school, and so I haven't done the training myself. I've always wanted to. Montessori was my inspiration. I read her book when I was just starting my studies at university, and from then on I said I want to be like her, because she had the children's best interests of child development at heart of what she was doing. Now, it's interesting you say play-based. Is it play-based? Because I have experienced some students of mine who went to work in a Montessori and they said, this doesn't feel like play-based. It's not your traditional children go and, kind of play around in small groups and have lots of active games. And it can be, there are parts of the day where they have a lot of active games and like playtime and run around the playground. But when they're during a work cycle, so in Montessori, they call it a work cycle. And in many ways, I like the word work, but in other ways, I'm like, ooh, that kind of changes the dynamic, how we understand what it means. But it does help it to feel more purposeful by calling it work. So what they do is they will choose their materials, and there's a set way those materials are used. So they are, the teachers guide them on how to use the materials. And they are playful. So you could say there are playful materials. They are very beautiful, many of them as well. And some of them are so amazing at, especially the mathematics materials resources.
Expensive.
And that, so I would say that Montessori herself would not have called it play-based, because she calls it work, but she will always acknowledge that play is the work of a child. So then she would probably say, they are working, they are playing, but this is purposeful, a work for the children. And I know that there are some Montessoris where it's quite strict and people strict to the traditions that they believe is traditional Montessori. And sometimes that means there's very little creative things in the classrooms. That often comes about as a conversation. But these days, most Montessoris are including all of that as well, with easels and paint and everything else. But they still have that training, you could say, of how to pick up the materials, in what way to hold them, and what helps children to use them in a particular way that's useful to the work that they need to do. So maybe I haven't answered it directly. Is it play-based? I would say that it is a form of play-based, but it's quite a structured form of play-based learning.
Yeah, because I actually have heard some schools, they might be a little bit too obsessed with the tools. Yeah. So again, that kind of takes the actual substance away.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah,
thanks so much. There was a lot of stuff in there, so in case you guys didn't get that all right, There will be a replay in the group. So if you haven't joined, just search our little group, 胎教 and 早教, 關注早. Yeah, great. So speaking from your perspective as a school principal, what do you expect parents to do more at home with their kids that can actually help them grow better?
Oh, yes. Well, I've worked when I've been in the kindergartens, we often do, I guess you could call it a form of parent education, parent training in the kindergartens around the interactions that they can have with their children. And the best things that you can do is take part in authentic learning opportunities with your children. So that means sometimes you don't even have to do anything except talk to them or make up a story with them, or play some lap games, as you might call it, like you sit on your lap and you start singing a song and you fall through the knees and things like that. So you're interacting and building connection. And I know it goes without saying, parents love their children, parents want to connect with their children, but in this day and age, really, sometimes parents don't have a lot of time with their children, unfortunately.
True that.
So finding that time, and when you have that time, it's quality time. You don't even need to pay for anything to do that. Just be with them, watch them, observe them. And that's something that sometimes parents don't do. They probably do it, but they don't realize that they're doing it, and that it can be very useful if they think of it in this way, is to make observations of their children. And I have in the past helped parents to know what to look for, what to observe, that then they can guide the things they do, the things they talk about. A little bit like what I would do with a teacher, but with a parent, because I do believe everyone who's in a child's life is their teacher, parents, teachers, principals, anyone that they have connection with. And I would say that important, and I know that I do have today, as you mentioned earlier, I do have the guide to kindergarten admissions that I hope will help families who want to have some more information. But if you're worried about getting your child into a kindergarten because they might not pass the interview, which is always sad to think that is our worry, is to build on conversation, language. Most kindergartens are looking for language for children to be communicating. It doesn't have to be verbal language, actually. It can be, something where they smile or interact with someone else. So stories and reading stories are very, very important to this as well, because it builds language so well.
Very, yeah. Thanks so much, Abby. I might want to weigh in a little bit, if you don't mind. I personally encourage all of you to nurture a good co-reading habit with your kids from day one. I'm not just talking about a reading habit. I'm talking about a co-reading habit. It's a very important culture that takes time to nurture. And it's worth it because it has a lot of benefits to help your kid develop academically and emotionally. And the intimacy between you guys will be absolutely gold, and you will be forever grateful for that. And I understand a lot of parents might be struggling to get their kids focused on books, but there are ways to tell a story that engage. I do have a very effective online training for parents to acquire this lifelong important skill. It's not expensive, it's only like a few $100, but it's really worth it. A lot of my clients do find this method help their kids engage much better and actually learn things through reading, not just flipping through pages, And my girls do chase me to read her stories every day at night. So if it's what you want, just give me a shout. And after this webinar, I can give you a little discount on this to further motivate you to take on this journey and build that intimacy for you guys. Yeah. So, of course, we can always have a quick chat about how else I can help you with other important aspects in parenting, like how to raise a top smart kid through nutrition and nurture and love. Okay. So speaking of the programs, how does your one-on-one program support parents in their endeavors to find a kindergarten for their child?
Oh, thank you. And I'm really pleased to hear about your storytelling workshop. I think it is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because
Not
those are the
excessive
kinds of
worry.
things. Yeah. So when I work with parents, I will be focusing and helping them to understand social and emotional development of their children. As we've said all the way through today, that really is, if they've got strong self-regulation skills, that is the skills to manage their emotions, understand their emotions, and express their emotions. Now, we're always remembering developmentally appropriately. So at 2 years old, a child is going to have areas where they're still developing in that, but we are there with, as the adults, parents especially are there as the adults to help them to build that social self-regulation and emotional regulation before they go into kindergarten or as they're in kindergarten. So when I work directly one-to-one, I have a one-to-one program that supports parents to use the language that helps children understand their emotions. I help them to kind of calmly nurture their child through temper tantrums, and which are very common, we know, or aggressive behaviors, as I was mentioning, and also just to build that connection. And it's not just with parents, potentially with domestic helpers. I know that can sometimes be often the point that can be challenging when children come into kindergartens. That can be the part where we say, oh, they have a lot of time with their domestic helper, but they haven't built that connection, and the domestic helper has difficulties around managing the children. So I support domestic helpers directly, or I support the parents to help the domestic helper. And I think work as a team in the end. So in terms of the one-to-one, that would be, regular phone calls, and I'm on either WhatsApp, Facebook, or Instagram direct messages at any time. Obviously, if I can get to within a few, within a amount of time, I can get to parents as things happen. Like, it can be just in hindsight, or it might be something's coming up that's particularly in their context, so that we can talk through that in our next session and have goals to work on, and hopefully have some brilliant outcomes for the children as well, because they then are secure and stable kind of going into kindergartens and, working and learning.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it sounds like a very meaningful program, and probably everyone should have it. Yeah. Tell us the truth, Abby. Is it really, really true that if kids graduated from fancy kindergartens are more likely to get into the fancy primary schools?
Oh, the question on everyone's lips, is it? Well, I have worked in famous kindergarten before, and I had the best time. I've met so many beautiful children and amazing families, but I also saw the pressures that came with getting into that kindergarten and getting through into there, because they wanted to go to these primary schools. And I can just say that I know that there are children that go into these kindergartens that are going in there so they can get to the primary schools. And it is, I always feel it's unfortunate that it has to be that way. But I also know there are children going from other kindergartens into those top primary schools as well. But just because it's an elite and top primary school doesn't mean that it's the best primary school for your child. This is always going to be my discussion with parents, is it really what's best for your child? So thinking, yes, maybe if you go to that kindergarten, you'll get into that primary school. But if they don't go to that kindergarten and they don't go to that primary school, will they be less happy? Will they be less able? Will they have not as good a job? Will they go to a different university? It's all about, taking your time and kind of giving yourself some, I think, allowance to say it's okay if they don't go to that primary school, because there's other very good schools in Hong Kong, and we can find those too. But unfortunately, there is a tendency towards that, and it's a challenging one for teachers who say, oh, okay, especially when they come from in the UK, you just go to the closest primary school to your house. So it's very different. And we're all fine. We just, we go to the school, and again, it comes back to that those foundations, and I think that's why early years is so important, but the foundations for the child in their confidence, in their self-esteem, in their belief in themselves. It doesn't matter what school they go to, they will excel because they already have those stable foundation skills. So it doesn't matter in the end. That's my belief.
Yeah, agreed. I know a lot of you might feel a little bit defeated after hearing this inconvenient truth, but I really want to motivate you guys that as a pharmacist myself, I've been mentoring a lot of pharmacy students, like a lot, at least 30 of them. And grades are not everything. In case you guys don't know, in my era, we needed to be the top of the top to get into CU pharmacy. I graduated from CUHK, and the requirements for us were actually higher than those for medicines. So in our class, I had to deal with students from really, really top schools, perfect grades. I'm talking about perfect grades like 10 A's in Hong Kong CEE and 5 A's in A levels. So literally perfect grades. But the classmates graduated with first honor actually struggled to find a job. And in contrast, the ones graduated with third honor didn't have any problem finding a job. And I'm just saying there are more important things beyond grades. And using myself as an example, I honestly did not go to any of those fancy schools. I just went to a very ordinary kindergarten, Chinese primary school, a very Chinese secondary school till HKCE. I still did pretty well. And actually my parents don't really speak English. So yeah, I'm just saying, when we get into universities, they're actually looking for other stuff on top of your grades, literally beyond that. Because I got 7 offers from 7 universities, 100% success rate. I only applied for 7, I got 7 offers, all pharmacy. I mean, I don't mean to brag or something, but I can tell you they all offered me a place because they were all impressed by my confidence and my personality. The point I'm trying to make here is that, universities, they're not just looking at your grades, especially those top majors, especially the parents, they want the kids to get into top majors like medicines and laws. They're definitely not looking at your grades. They really want to know if you have what it takes to be a good doctor or a good lawyer or even a good pharmacist per se. And it's the substance and personality that can lead you to the next level. So I'm so glad that, Abby, you're nodding all along. So what will be your number 1 tip for parents anxious about finding kindergarten for their little one?
Oh, well, I think allow yourself to feel the anxiety and let it go is one of those biggest tips for you and yourself. And I think getting to know your child, and I said this earlier, it sounds so obvious, your child, but really knowing their development and, what is appropriate, developmentally appropriate for their age, for their context, for their experiences, and kind of getting to know that so that when you do go into kindergartens, you are totally prepared for asking the questions, for understanding what's best for your child there and then, because that will then, I think, will help with any anxiety that you have actually with kindergarten interviews and applications. There's lots of paperwork and all of that, but if you know what you understand about your child and what's best for them, then you will find it much easier to kind of navigate it.
Okay, just another pulse check. How many of you are willing to take Abby's advice to actually let go of your pressure? I'm hoping I'm getting at least 1. Oh, please. Oh, great. Okay, I see 1 hope. How about the rest? Okay, 2 hopes. That's great. How about you guys? I mean, are you guys just going to, drop out and, take all that pressure back on? Yeah? Okay, well, it looks like, I really do hope you guys can, take that pressure off yourselves, because you don't really hold on to those so-called fans that much. There are more important things in life, and I really encourage you guys to spend some actual time to develop that kind of physical intimacy, because I think that's a very important thing. if you are asking me for a tip, that goes a long way. Yeah. How about we have one last question, because I know we've only have 1 hour from you. How can parents find you if they're looking for support?
Well, I have, if you, after this session, I have got the guide, the kindergarten admissions guide, which will be free to anyone who, I think you're going to send the link and everything if you are wanting to sign up for anything from both of us. So you'll see my email address on there, and also my social media. So I do work quite a lot through Facebook and so Instagram. I don't know if anyone's on, not everyone uses Instagram, I know that. But you can find me on Instagram as Early Years Specialist. And on Facebook, I'm actually Abigail, Early Years Specialist. So you can find me there or give me an email. And if you do sign up, then if you would like me to send you more information about how I work with families to support them through the personal, social and emotional development of their children before and during they're going into kindergartens. Yes, you can find my email there. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm pretty sure a lot of them will be craving for you after this. Yeah, they definitely have a lot more questions to be answered. Well, we got some really key messages of the night. We can't just rely on schools because they can just change overnight, inside out. Yeah, it can happen. Anything can happen, especially with the private ones. But your part will not change because you're in charge of everything and it all depends on yourselves. Of course, you know how confusing it is to do everything on your own, and that's why we exist. But we're both very busy. I mean, we only have very limited quota to take in new parents in August. So if you really want to improve the way you parent, now is the time. Yeah, now is the time. The reason I only work with those before 2 years old is that, you know, the brain development already completed at least like 75% by the age of 2. So the sooner the better, definitely the sooner the better. Actually, the pregnant ones are the best because the humans actually start learning things 3 months before birth secretly. Yeah, they do. And I want to make sure that I'm not wasting that early curiosity, and I'm pretty sure Abby would not want to waste that either. Okay, so before we conclude tonight, Abby has this amazing kindergarten guide for parents, and I also have a 10% discount code to join my storytelling workshop and $500 coupon to join my Ngogato Sigwata Hao program. If you want them, just message me at 62163110. That's basically the WhatsApp number I contacted you, or just comment me below the live session. But I'm going to make that very easy for you. Right now, I'm just going to share a screen where you can just scan the code and get that guide right now. Okay. So you guys can scan this code to get this. Or if you're using your phone to Zoom, you can just WhatsApp me and I can send you the link. This guide is amazing, absolutely amazing. So do you have any more questions from parents tonight? Any more questions? Or already very busy filling out the form? Yeah, probably they're already very busy doing that. So that's great. Yep. So Abby, you talked about the course for domestic helpers. Is there anything you want to tell them? Because we're going to collaborate.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to working with you on that, because I've worked with domestic helpers in schools and now coming out into to work directly more with families. So with the course, we want to give domestic helpers, we kind of want to give them the confidence, don't we, to feel like they are supporting children's learning and development, and also working closely with the family. So it would be including how to support learning at home, which has been a big one during COVID, we know, but authentic learning as in doing things that are quite simple and straightforward. You don't need a lot of fuss. And also some child development knowledge, so they can use that theory when they go home and understand the children that they're working with.
Yeah, actually, I am going to create a course collaborating with Abby on domestic helpers supporting certificate course. It's going to be a certificate course, because we understand that a lot of parents, they might be anxious about leaving their kid to their domestic helper because they're not sure what exactly they're going to execute the instructions. And you can never verify what kind of content or the course they've been going through when they're back in their own home, Philippines or Indonesia. So you probably would want to have a higher standard course for your domestic helper, and that's coming right up. So if you want that, then please just indicate your interest on the form and we'll contact you when it's almost out. Okay, and if you guys do want to join my storytelling workshop, just indicate your interest and I'll send you the promo code. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Kathy. And Stephanie, Tracy, thanks so much for staying with us.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. So anyone still wants more time? Okay, thank you, Maisie. Yeah. So I do be for a good weekend. Right.